Hi, I'm Sam Pearson, and my presentation is on storyboarding. Storyboarding is a part of the animation industry pipeline, and as a genre of technical writing, it would fall under the category of instructional documents. Instructional documents are used to guide and give information on how a person should use the product or do something. So this is my advanced organizer, and what I'm going to go over is what is a storyboard, as in the audience of a storyboard, the purpose of a storyboard, and the context of a storyboard. Uh, how are storyboards crucial to the animation process, and how to approach making a storyboard. So, a storyboard usually visualizes a script that the storyboard artists are given. Uh, the storyboards include a lot of visual writing and actual writing, as in notes in the storyboard. You can see an example of this if you look at my personal example. The main part of the storyboard is the images, and then below that, there are notes as to how characters should move, what shot sizes to use, how camera movement should happen, stuff like that. But you may notice that it's different from the professional example. The professional example is different as most studios nowadays use animatics instead of storyboards, which are basically the same thing. Just the animatic is the storyboard already animated. It's like a sketch. This animatic is then re-gone over by the animators and cleaned up. How someone storyboards depends on the industry, as it says in the bottom left corner from the quote from my professor. She gives some experience on how her storyboarding for clients is different from how you would storyboard for a studio, and it's also different for if you're storyboarding for a personal project, such as my personal example that was for one of my classes. So, who are storyboards for? Or their audience? They technically have around three audiences. Their first audience, obviously, being who's going to watch it, the demographic of person that's meant to watch this animation. As in, is it a child's animation? Is it adult animation? Who is the animation meant to be watched by? The second person that's going to see this storyboard is their boss, as in the person that will approve their storyboard and pass it on to the animators up the production line. Their boss might include being the art director or the head of storyboarding, or anyone else that they might need to see for character design, stuff like that. And their last audience would be the animators, as the animators have to follow this instructional storyboard and animate it. So, from what we've already talked about, you can see how storyboards are a crucial part of the animating process, but there's a little more to that than what I've talked about. For one, how I said before that it was an instruction document and how that doesn't fit quite well with the two of the audiences that I've mentioned. It does, however, fit with the animator audience. Looking in the bottom right here at the production image, or rather the production pipeline image, you can see that there's a bunch of different elements that go into an animation. As you can see, storyboards are in the pink development section of this pipeline. They lead into the pre-production, and then pre-production leads into the shot production, which eventually leads to the story reel, and then post-production stuff such as marketing, distribution, stuff like that. But you might be asking, why are storyboards important? Couldn't they just animate from the script? Storyboard artists actually make a lot of decisions on how things are going to look and move, as well as taking into account that they used character designs from art direction or character in the development part of the pipeline in order to create their storyboard or animatic, in order to explain to the animators how the script should be animated or how the animation should look. If we're looking at the animation pipeline as a whole, storyboards specifically may adhere more to the planning and drafting stages of tech writing. but it also follows the planning, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading roles of technical writing before it's passed on to the next part of the animation process. As in, while it's technically those two stages, it does follow all of the stages, or rather rules of technical writing. Speaking of the rules of technical writing, we have, again, planning, drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. Now, the quote in the bottom right I did have on the previous slide, but it does go along better with this slide, as it talks about how storyboard artists will go over certain scenes over and over and over again until they get it just right for that second audience of the boss or whoever they're working for. So, how I would approach making this storyboard, we're going to start with planning. If you're making this on your own, you're going to need a script, character design, and at least some idea for the background. And also, you're going to need a story. That's the most important part of a storyboard. It's kind of in the name. Following up is drafting. Using all the things that you just came up with, you start the process of making the storyboard, often putting in notes in the storyboard on how a character moves, character shots, and how the camera should move, as I mentioned before. Now, with revising, editing, and proofreading all sort of work together as its cycle mostly. In the revising stage, you reevaluate your audience purpose and subject. This in storyboarding may particularly apply to adjusting some scenes to better apply to audiences, such as kids. It could also include the adding or dropping of some scenes to better adhere to time limitations, or even the dealing with other issues scenes might have. Deleted scenes are often very common in both animated and non-animated film. Talking about deleted scenes, the top right here, this is not specifically a deleted scene, but if you were interested in seeing a deleted scene from this movie, it's on YouTube. It's a Transformers 1 deleted scene storyboard. But you can also see in that image how different a storyboard may look from the final animation. Editing, as mentioned in our textbook, Technical Communication, there are a few guidelines for editing. While the first one, referring to if paragraphs are developed, might not directly apply to storyboards, the rest of the guidelines that have to do with making sure the document's instructions are clear, concise, and effective work well for this stage of storyboard editing. Storyboards are, again, instructional documents for the animators and the production teams, technically, made by storyboard artists that need to be clear in order for the animators to understand how the script is to be animated. Proofreading, being the final process, is likely a storyboard animator showing the full storyboard to their boss for approval and getting critiques on what they need to change. Critique being suggestions on what they should change, or rather feedback. Or proofreading could be going back through your own storyboard and citing some of the things don't work and that they need to be changed or removed, such as, again, a scene, which then takes you back to the revising stage. Like I said, it's sort of a cycle of editing. Well, revising, editing, and proofreading. The first reference is for the pipeline image on slide 4. The second is for the professional example on slide 3. The third is for the storyboard and final animation image on slide 5. 4 is for reference to the technical writing guidelines in our textbook. And then the fifth is the reference to the interview that I had with my professor.